I know I should have more energy and be happier, but some things happened since our last talk. And all I can say is I wish I would have heard our next speaker a little sooner. She's going to talk about AI compliance. I was so close. But hopefully you guys can avoid the mistakes that I've made in my life. If you'll listen to our next speaker and welcome Austin Carroll.
So scandalous.
Hi everyone, I'm here to talk about everyone's favorite subject, how not to end up in a lawsuit. I'm sure everyone is ready. You're ready to not end up in court. Who doesn't want to end up in court? I'm really concerned that I'm not seeing everyone's hand. But I mean, who here uses AI for marketing today? I mean, pretty much everyone. You're at an AI marketing conference. Now, who here has your lawyer review every piece of marketing material before it goes out? Yeah, I thought so. That's actually why they invited me here today to speak to you guys. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of a horror story just because it's almost Halloween. So the FTC has yet to bring a major case about using AI-generated marketing. What does that mean? Does that mean you're in the clear? No. That means that there are people at the FTC, not right this moment because we're in a shutdown thing, but typically there are people at the FTC, they are reviewing all of your marketing material, they're taking notes, they're seeing who's violating, and they're getting ready to bring a big case against a major brand. That could be you, and hopefully it's not. But today, during this speech, we're going to talk about how we don't make you the test case that's going to basically be the, problem for the next 20 years. So today we're going to talk a little bit about comply or die. So if we're good. Oh, I don't have a clicker. So maybe we won't talk about this, actually. Great. So my name is Austin Carroll. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Warrant. We're a marketing compliance tool, which basically means most companies come to me when their AI has done something that is spectacularly stupid. But I'm also married to Austin, who gets mentioned up here on the stage a lot. So yes, we're both named Austin, so we can get that out of the way. But here's what we kind of do with Warrant. So I was at Warrant, and how I've created Warrant is basically what I've seen over the last couple years. Previously, I worked in financial services and fintech. I worked at Capital One and Brex. While I was at Brex, a thing happened called the Silicon Valley Bank collapse. We just had 48 hours to let over 2 million customers know that their money was safe. So I had a junior copywriter draft an email to go out to all of those people. She said, Brex is the safest place to put your money. Luckily, we caught it. We caught it right before it went out. Our lawyers caught it. But that is a really great example. That is someone that's worked in financial services. They were on a deadline. They created this copy. But if you use AI is going to immediately say, this is the safest, the best bank account in the world. So now you kind of see the issue. AI can basically violate all 17 regulations that apply to your business in seconds before you've even finished your coffee. So it's really important to really make sure you know what those regulations are so you know how to check AI and use it compliantly. Also, I need a disclaimer because what would a compliance seminar be without a disclaimer? I am not an attorney. I am a startup founder. You should almost never listen to them except in this case. This information is for educational purposes only and should not be considered legal advice. Please get a lawyer. They're going to be able to define exactly what regulators may be looking at your content, and it's probably worth that $300 an hour charge just to have that peace of mind. So a really wise person that you've all heard of once said, the riskiest thing that you can do as a business is market yourself. Does anyone know who said that? No one? It was me, just now. And it really makes sense when you think about it, because if your product team launches a product late, that sucks. If your finance team miscalculates something, as long as it's not taxes, you can usually fix it. But if your marketing team publishes a testimonial that wasn't approved, you could be in court. If you said something that you shouldn't, AI hallucinated a weird tweet, that could be brand damaging forever. So it really is the only department in a company that can destroy your brand with one tweet. So that's why it's super important to really look at your marketing. I'm going to share a couple examples of how marketers have gotten this wrong and what we can learn from them when using AI. So if you haven't heard of Baggu, I don't actually know how to say it, but they make those reusable grocery bags that you see at Urban Outfitters. They actually did something really crazy a couple weeks ago. One of the marketers, they were opening a new San Francisco storefront. So one of the marketers said, as they do, wouldn't it be cute? I feel like whenever you say, wouldn't it be cute, that usually really kills the lawyers in the room. So yeah, wouldn't it be cute if we put the BART logo on these bags for our San Francisco store opening? So BART being the transportation metro in San Francisco. So they said, oh, that would be cute. They went ahead and did it. The problem is no one asked legal, no one asked BART. So now they find themselves in a federal trademark lawsuit because they used the BART logo without permission. Now, they could have just forgot to ask legal, pretty bad mess up either way. However, what's interesting is with AI has been trained on copyrighted material. We all know that. ChatGPT has basically admitted it, and Claude has officially admitted it. So when you ask ChatGPT, create a logo of a transportation company in San Francisco with 2 interlocking Bs, it's going to spit out something that is trademark violation worthy. So it's really important to check those trademarks. Writer is another really famous example of the recent years with AI writing. So Writer was one of the first AI writing tools. It was a really cool tool, but their compliance was not great. They were actually selling fake reviews on their website. It's a killer feature, right? Killer would be a really great word for it. They're still been in the FTC, just kind of going through the motions there. What Writer's defense was, well, the robot was writing these fake reviews, so why should we be at fault? Well, that's not a very great defense. Who here thinks that you can say that the AI did it and I'm not liable? You. Not a great defense. And then we have BetterHealth. So BetterHealth was collecting a lot of mental health surveys. So you would go to their website, you would fill out, like, I feel angry sometimes at the FTC, and they would say, oh, yes, we get that a lot. So they would then share that information with Facebook for retargeting. That's a pretty standard marketing practice. People come to your website, they fill out a form, and then you retarget them on Facebook and Snapchat. But what they were really doing is selling that data to a social media platform. They got hit with a $7.8 million lesson in that case. And I think what's interesting about all of these is when you're thinking about agentic AI and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to have one amazing agent, they're going to be collecting the forms, they're going to be a chatbot on the website. And then I have another agent, they're going to retarget them on another platform. You don't even have a human in the loop there. You don't really know what each agent is doing. That's going to make you very liable for these type of regulator scrutiny that we're going to talk about in a second. And I know what you might be thinking, because it's in the news. I thought we were waiting for AI regulation. Not quite. So as the former FTC chair said, using AI tools to trick, mislead, or defraud people is illegal. There's no AI exemption from the law on the books. And someone actually did even try to use the robot defense in court. It ended up being Air Canada. So a person's grandmother died, so they went to Air Canada's website. They said, hey, I need to book a bereavement fare. Air Canada's chatbot said, wonderful, just book it and we'll refund you later. That's our policy. So the guy went to the funeral, he came back to Air Canada, he said, ready for my refund? They said, oh, that's not how it works. The AI had hallucinated that entire policy. Great. So he did what anyone would do. He sued in court. And in court, Air Canada thought the best defense ever would be to say that the AI was an independent entity from themselves and therefore was not responsible for its actions. That didn't work actually at all. They still had to pay the guy, but it really does show you that the AI and yourself are one and the same. So really thinking about how to use it compliantly is very important. So what regulations should you be aware of as a marketer here in the United States of America? As I assume some of you are from abroad, but definitely here in the US, we have the federal laws. The grandfather of all marketing compliance is the FTC Act Section 5, which is the Truth in Advertising Act. So there are 3 purposes to this. The main thing that they're trying to do with this law is have you not mislead customers. So 1, something shouldn't be misleading or likely to mislead customers. 2, the consumer's interpretation of that claim is reasonable. And 3, that misleading claim is material, which means it actually affects purchasing decisions. If your content doesn't mislead customers in any of these ways, it is, for the most part, completely fine, assuming it's not violating someone's trademark. I'm going to tell you a little bit about, I mentioned that I worked at Capital One. So Capital One was recently a part of this kind of a little bit crazy Consumer Financial Protection Bureau lawsuit. What happened there is Capital One had 2 savings accounts. On one of them, it said, we have the best savings rate ever. The problem is, it didn't even have the best savings rate at Capital One. So that's going super well for them. Second is Poppy. I'm sure a lot of you have seen their Instagram ads. For a long time, they were saying, Poppy is the healthy soda because it has probiotics in it. The problem is that is a claim. They're claiming that it's healthy. They're claiming that it's good for you. The issue is that you would have to drink like 50 Poppies to get any kind of health benefits. And by that time, your entire gut would be completely filled with sugar. So they also have a huge, I think it was like a $9 million class action. So I think it's still open if anyone wants to get some cash. And the third thing is really regarding that FTC endorsement and testimonial guide. So they actually updated this in 2023 to really talk to influencers, to talk to people using influencers for promotional, promotion. So with that, you really have to think about how you can have a disclosure that is very clear. The FTC has officially said that you cannot bury a hashtag ad within 50 other hashtags and say that that was the correct disclosure. You need to disclose your exact relationship. Sunday Riley is a really funny example. For 2 years, all of their employees were writing Sephora reviews, just for fun, I guess, to promote their brand. So they also got a sanction from the FTC. Fake reviews, testimonials need to reflect the average customer's experience, and they need to be real. They can't be fake. We also were in the United States of America, states being the operative word there. So every state has their own version of the FTC's laws. This made a ton of sense before the internet, but now, even today, you can still get sanction from your beautiful attorney general in your state. And then we have channel regulations as well. CAN-SPAM Act, which is for email marketing, and then the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, which regulates text and SMS. Actually, here in the state of Texas, it's very difficult to text people now in terms of marketing, so definitely look into that if you're local. I always like to say, let's play some marketing compliance bingo. So my AI writes a beautiful LinkedIn post, and it includes my competitor's trademarked phrase. So there's one. It says that this result is guaranteed in the state of Florida, so I got another. I used a list that I got from Facebook, so I'm sharing customer data without their consent. I'm targeting students or maybe healthcare workers. Oh, and I also want to target children that are 12. And let's see, I want to text everyone and let them know about my new offer. And it's a financial product. So that was one AI-generated post. So you can kind of see how these can kind of stack. Suddenly, I'm on the radar of 4 different regulators. Because when you think about what puts you on that regulator's radar, really has to do with the type of company, what product are you selling, what channel are you using, and then who is your audience? Because all of those things can get different regulators involved in looking at your material. So how can you stay safe? We've talked a lot about dying throughout this presentation. So what can you do to survive and even thrive in this regulatory world that we are currently in? The first step is human review. You really should have a human that is looking at the content before you post it. We're going to go over very briefly a checklist that you can use when you're reviewing that content. Second, you're going to want to add disclosures. Disclosures are required by a lot of regulators depending on your industry, but they are also preferred by consumers. Consumers want to know that they are looking at an AI-generated video. It's not going to hurt your content that much. It's really about how can you be transparent that this is AI-generated. And third, documentation is your insurance. So make sure you're logging every AI prompt, you're keeping records of approvals, you know what went out and when. That's what's going to be your defense if you ever find yourself in a legal or regulatory audit. And then what should you check for? So check for things like forever free or a limited time, unless you really mean it. To be very careful about specific dollar amounts. Specific dollar amounts have to be guaranteed. You're basically promising the customer that that will always be the case. I've found that that isn't always the case, so you really want to check that. Third, you really want to avoid any of those safety claims. Like I talked about when I started the presentation, you want to avoid any no risk or always safe claims. 3, terms and conditions apply. If that's the case, you want to make sure it's one click away. If you have terms that dramatically affects the offer that you're giving, it needs to be one click away. That's why I would really be concerned about using Instagram for this kind of offer. Last, absolute claims like always, best, or only. Testimonials that don't reflect the average user's experience. Influencers without a prominent disclosure. And then data, awards, memberships, testimonial claims that are not verifiable. And they have been going after memberships, so do not say you're part of an association if they don't know who you are. That's a very quick way to get a little bit of a sanction. And now here's kind of the part where I talk about a solution. You don't need to use a tool for marketing compliance. You can use Google Drive, you can use Excel checklists, but it is helpful to use AI, especially if you're creating content en masse. That way you know exactly when something was approved, and you have AI do that first pass of a checklist like the one that we just went over. So my tool, Warrant, is great for that, but there are several other tools. At worst case, create a ChatGPT prompt, give it that checklist what we just went over, and then you're going to be much more likely to succeed. I also recently wrote a book about, I know, it's actually coming out next week, but I'm giving out a few free books if you guys would like. We're really talking about how companies, especially regulated industries, are using marketing are using AI in their marketing today. So definitely go ahead and scan that for a free copy. There's also a couple really long chapters about compliance in there, but it's a really fun read, and you get to hear about how Netflix, Morgan Stanley, and other major companies are leveraging AI today in their marketing. So thank you guys so much, and stay compliant. And if you are compliant and your competitors die, hey, you're still standing. Thank you.
so scandalous.